Are you ready to navigate the new way to work? Forbes Books presents Dare to Care in the Workplace with Kathleen Quinn Botaw. Here's Kathleen.
My guest this week is Mike Zani, the CEO of Predictive Index, an award-winning talent optimization platform that uses over 60 years of proven science and software to help businesses design high-performing teams and cultures, make objective hiring decisions, and inspire greatness in people. Mike is also the author of the Wall Street Journal bestseller, The Science of Dream Teams. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Well, Mike, you and I know each other for many, many years. And I was so fascinated digging into your background because you have served on multiple leadership teams before joining Predictive Index. Tell us a little bit about what you learned in places like Shake Up that prepared you for your current role.
Well, my business partner, Daniel, and I had this really strange business model or investment model where we buy used companies with other people's money. And we did this right out of grad school, doing it one at a time with the objective to, buy something that was sort of a diamond in the rough, take it over, turn it around, create, really high quality company and ultimately sell it. And we've done that 4 times. So we've had the great joy of doing this. But when we started, we really didn't know what we were doing.
Isn't that the truth? When we all start, none of us know what we're really doing. And so what were the 4 companies that you invested in?
Well, when we first started, we were probably, you would categorize us as not high quality acquirers. A founder builds a business, has an epiphany that they want to sell the business. We were not on their top of the list of people who should buy the company. We were sort of 32, 34-year-old snot-nosed kids fresh out of MBA. We weren't a known fund. We weren't a strategic investor. But the first company we purchased was a company called LEDCO, which stood for Law Enforcement Development Company. And it was located in Detroit. And it was a pretty simple manufacturer of rugged docking stations that went into cop cars to enable computers to survive in that environment. And
very cool.
That was our first start.
So when the cops come and ask for your license and insurance and they go back to the computer, it's your fault?
Yes, it is. To this day, I can't walk past a cop car without looking in to see whose equipment they're running. And that was back in 2004 when we first invested in that company.
Cool.
And there's one thing that happened at LEDCO, the first time we bought a company, we got the strategy right, we got the financing right, we knew what to do with the business, but what we missed, and we missed badly, was the people side of the business. That when we acquired this company from this founder, we sort of acquired the team that he had built to execute on the old strategy. Well, we came in with this newfangled strategy, and the team that he had built was not the team that we needed to execute on our new strategy. And it took us about 1.5 years to sort of figure this out and turn this around. And it took us 5 years to really build a world-class team. But even though we went to Harvard Business School, the ivory tower of business schools that is put on a pedestal, they don't teach you the people side of business there because it's not easy to teach and there's no real curriculum to it. But that was our first great lesson. I tell people, first business, LEDCO, was a master's degree in human resources.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it was. And tell us what you did there. Dig into that just a little bit more.
Well, it's interesting. We were not a great, hiring brand or, destination for most people. We had a D facility. We didn't pay well. When we first invested in the company, we didn't have any appreciable benefits. There wasn't health insurance. They used to hire out of temp agencies and churn through people. Until they could find people.
The temp to hire mentality.
Yeah, and honestly, the founder's strategy was he would just churn through people out of temp until he found people that he could stand, and that technique was really just if they laughed at his jokes, they would stay. And I mean, it's about as bad of a human capital strategy as you can have. So we really had to start from scratch. Only 4 of those 45 people made it through our 5-year tenure of ownership. And we had to completely rebuild the team without having a hiring brand. So we had to beg, borrow, and steal to try and up level our talent. And we couldn't afford to just pay the most. When you're a small manufacturer in Detroit, the high-end people, they work for Ford. They work for GM. They work for Chrysler. They don't work for Ledco, which means we really had to hire early tenured employees, emergent candidates who hadn't been there, done that, and really invest in a lot of learning and development and training and getting our hands dirty with these, sort of newish managers and sort of craft a team that was, an emergent team. And, we over that course of the 5 years, we made lots of mistakes, but we ended up building a really world-class team that transformed the company, 7-fold revenue growth. And we created a happy place to work, a fun place to work, and a lot of value for our investors.
Oh, that's so wonderful. In my book, Dare to Care, my new book that came out in Q4, and I do want to talk about your book, The Science of Dream Teams, as well. But I talk about that having fun, that flexibility, and building communities. So you built this emergent team. What do you suggest business owners invest in building these teams? I often get that question. I'd love your point of view on that.
Well, I actually think most leaders need to start with themselves. I think if the leader is committed to be their best every day, if they're committed to being self-aware and going on this journey of self-awareness and self-improvement, that they can then hire and attract people who will also go on this journey. Where when you look at world-class teams, and most of us see this, in sports, because we're sitting on our couch on weekends and we're watching our favorite basketball, football team, what have you. And world-class teams, have a lot of trust and respect and great communication. You can see, like, when a basketball team calls a timeout, they don't always go to the coach at the sidelines. They often get in a huddle, the 5 players who are currently on and they're talking about how they're dealing with the forces which are attacking them, the other team. And when you are a self-aware leader, and when you create a team that can get together and be vulnerable, trust each other and communicate, that's the seed that starts this sort of virtual process.
And people really are more productive working in teams than they are working in isolation, don't you think?
Certainly. And the team size matters. Our best teams are usually, in the 6, 7, 8 size range, as opposed to massive teams or, like you said, working independently or in very small groups.
Where they can build community and relationships that they trust.
That's right. And not everyone's having a great day every day. So they pick each other up and they support each other and they build off each other's ideas. And it that community aspect, both in life but in business, really matters.
Well, I love that you have that experience with Ledco that led you down the path to the Predictive Index, which I'm a fan of the Predictive Index, as you've known for years. And I've heard you say that change management is one of your biggest obstacles when you took over the Predictive Index. So tell us, what did you learn about yourself during that process when you took over PI?
Well, the Predictive Index is a 60-year-old company when we bought it. So it turned 60 in 2014. And so now it's 67 years old. And when you're 60 years being family run, you develop a lot of inertia. And it was not the type of inertia where it was in motion. It was the inertia where it wasn't in motion. It was sort of a slow-moving family-run business. And the overwhelming culture is, it's about not changing as opposed to changing. So you get Daniel and I coming in. This was our 4th investment. We had a little bit of cockiness because the other 3 turnaround projects went well. We had been there and done that. So we had been clients of the Predictive Index for 10 years. So we were ready to go. We were ready to change day one. We had been dreaming about buying this company for 5 years before we actually bought it. So we tried to buy the Predictive Index in 2009, got very close, but the family just couldn't get their arms around selling it at that time. So to think about, you get these two leaders, they've done it before, they've been clients, they know what they want to do, and they've been thinking about it for 5 years. We were ready to go. And what we ran into was a lot of, that's not how we do it around here. And
it's a death of a company. That's not the way we do it around here.
It's not how we do it around here. Now, interestingly, with employees, you have a lot more leverage over change. But we also have certified partners, which are independent contractors who work every day very hard, reselling, servicing, training, and consulting on the Predictive Index. And, there's joys and frustrations with contractors, often referred in the United States as, 1099 independent contractors. One, the joy is they're independent. You don't own every aspect of them. You don't, pay their payroll, you don't pay their benefits. There's a lot of independence and independent thinking, but you can also not force them to change. You have to convince them to change. And I really think that's where the change management was. For 60 years, you had this group of, we call them certified partners, but independent contractors. And we had to make sure that we had compelling reasons, like what's in it for you, in order to get that change management. And it took some momentum because we were the new guys. They didn't have to listen to us. And until we had proven ourselves, there was maybe not as much reason to listen to us. After 7 years of hard work, we've built and established that trust and common communication so that change is easier. But, it's something you have to work at every single day.
Absolutely. And I know some of your certified partners, and they're amazing humans that contribute all over the country. Tell me what makes a good certified partner for the Predictive Index.
Well, Kathleen, I've been trying to convince you and Talent Trust to become a certified partner for 5.5 years?
Just a little bit.
You would be a perfect certified partner. But in seriousness, I'll use you as a model. You are someone who is a thought leader in the talent space. You have a strong opinion on how to add value at people's companies. And, people like the Predictive Index, we approach people like you and say, hey, we can provide you a scientifically backed data model to help you do what you do every day, which is adding value, broadly speaking, on the talent side of people's business so they can actually execute their strategies, because strategies don't execute themselves. People execute strategies.
Correct.
I know you know this. So we provide those tools to typically small and medium-sized consulting businesses who have a talent centricity. And we're just trying to provide them with the software, the science, and the data validated through science to help them do their job better with a really solid data model.
Well, it's a wonderful platform. And, when you originally acquired the Predictive Index, the science was there, but you've grown the technology so much, Mike. Can you tell us more about what you've done with the talent optimization platform?
This was probably the greatest lesson we've learned, and the journey we've been on for Daniel and I was taking a 60-year-old behavioral assessment, which was really designed in pencil and paper, and really trying to turn it into a software suite or system. It turns out that most people don't actually want science. They want science to work for them. So they want their planes to fly and their self-driving cars to stop on time, but they don't really want to know a lot about science or get into the science. They just want the tools that are in front of them to work well and to give them the right answers. So you have to build the science really behind the scenes and give people these really easy to use tools so that they can get value right away. And I want to use an example. This is a Jobsian thing he did to us, and he didn't even mean to. So he gave us all $1,000 computers which sit in our pocket called iPhones. It obviously works on Androids or Google Pixel phones as well. But what we got out of getting this computer in our pocket was the App Store or equivalent. And everyone does this. They download an app from the App Store. They give it about 15 to 30 seconds. If that app doesn't add value to their life, it becomes a dead app on their phone. Now, and we all have them. Actually, 90% of the apps on our phones are dead apps. They never get opened.
You're so right.
So what happens is if the tool does not add value to your life quickly, if it's not easy to understand, you'll stop using it. If it adds value to your life, you keep using it. If it adds a lot of value to your life, you'll actually pay for the premium version. And we've all done this. We all have apps that we're like, oh, I'm happy to pay for that. I love that app. So today's current world of software development is all about adding value to people's lives quickly. It's not about the science. They want it there, but it doesn't need to be in their face. And this journey has been really exciting, trying to learn how to build software out of a 60-year-old behavioral assessment.
Exactly. And it's such the right time for your talent optimization platform and the book you just wrote, The Science of Dream Teams. Congratulations, my friend, on that.
Thank you. Thank you. I felt a little bit of an obligation. I'm sitting on all of this data, sort of 50 million, data points of, behavioral assessments, hundreds of thousands of data points on jobs and 10,000 data points on companies and their strategies. With all this data and, our team of scientists, we do have a lot of PhDs in IO psychology on staff and data scientists trying to tease from the data what our best practices. So, started, during the pandemic to write The Science of Dream Teams. And it's probably the first book on talent optimization, given those names, but it's really, it will never be the best book, but it's the first one and has a lot of data that we used and culled from the Predictive Index to get people started on this journey. Because true people who embrace talent optimization, they go on this lifetime journey. And this is something that you've obviously gone on and excelled at, but realizing that your companies can compete, with and through world-class people, world-class teams, world-class, behavioral practices and human resource practices, that we hope this is a little bit of a cookbook for them to get started on that journey.
That's wonderful. People do want the recipe, and they want the recipe to work. They don't want to know how you cook the cake. They really don't want you to. And we've just gone through a remarkable 22 months now of lots of change when it comes to the people side of the business. What is your biggest lesson through 2020 and 2021? And the work that you're doing now? What can you share?
Well, I think the great resignation, as it's been coined, or I've heard the great exit or exodus, has really uncovered a lot about companies that were doing things well in the past and doing things poorly. So a great company, they might have had 5% turnover, and now they might have 10, 12% turnover. But a bad company might have had 10 or 15% turnover pre-pandemic and now has 50, 60% turnover.
Absolutely.
So the delta between good and bad has exploded. The people who had been doing the good work all the time, creating a great corporate culture, taking care of their people, really having strong, values, mission statements, social mores, best practices with things like employee engagement surveys and really acting on them, really strong learning and development and mentorship programs. Those companies are killing it right now. Not only do they have less churn, but all the people that are churning and looking to get rehired are going there. And the people who weren't making those investments in the past are just getting bludgeoned right now and almost can't keep up with their demand because people are leaving and they can't re-attract people. And as a Boston tech company, we had a diversity problem. We still do. But our diversity problems have gotten so much better over the last 20 months because we're now hiring all over the country with no geographic boundaries because we're working remote or hybrid, and we have a strong hiring brand. People say, well, what are you doing about the, this, war on talent 2.0 with the Great Resignation? We're like, we're taking everyone's best people. That's what we're doing. And so that's the lesson was that, and there's an old Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. So I tell people, like, there's no better time to get started than right now at working on these best practices, because we don't know what the future holds.
I so agree with you. And those companies that pay attention to the people who work for them, because we hire people, whole people, with their entire lives that they want to live. So those companies are going to continue to thrive. Okay, Mike, we have to take a break. But coming up in the second part of my talk with Mike Zani, the CEO of the Predictive Index and the author of the Wall Street Journal bestseller, The Science of Dream Teams, Mike shares his thoughts on how human resources will evolve.
The future of HR sees a lot more people who are just good managers, talented business leaders, going into the talent side of things, not just into the business side of things.
This has been Dare to Care in the Workplace. To connect with Kathleen, go to KathleenQuinnBotaw.com. Kathleen's book, Dare to Care, is available wherever books are sold. Dare to Care in the Workplace is a production of Forbes Books.